The pen trembled in her fingers. Across the polished conference table, her soon-to-be ex-husband smirked, his attorney beside him adjusting gold cufflinks that cost more than everything Clara owned. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in that Manhattan high-rise, casting a sickly glow on the divorce papers spread before her like a death sentence. "Sign it already," Derek said, leaning back in his leather chair. "We don't have all day." The room was filled with people who had come to witness her downfall. Derek's mother, pearl necklace tight around her throat, lips pursed in permanent disdain. His sister photographing the moment on her phone, probably to share with their country club friends. Even Derek's business partners stood by the window, champagne glasses in hand, celebrating before the ink was dry. Clara's hand hovered over the signature line. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of promises that turned to ash, 3 years of believing she deserved the crumbs he tossed her. To weigh while he built an empire on secrets she was only beginning to understand. "This is pathetic," Derek's mother said, checking her watch. "The girl can barely write her own name." Laughter rippled through the room. Clara felt the heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her eyes down, focused on the black letters swimming before her. She had nothing. The prenuptial agreement had seen to that. No house, no car, no savings, not even the modest inheritance her grandmother had left her, which Derek had convinced her to invest in his company 2 years ago. All gone. Everything she had worked for, hoped for, dreamed of, erased with a few signatures on documents she had been too naive to read carefully. "Just sign it, Clara." Derek's voice carried that familiar edge of impatience. "You're embarrassing yourself." She looked up then, meeting his eyes for the first time since entering the room. Those blue eyes she had once found so beautiful now seemed cold and calculating, like chips of ice in a face carved from marble. "Why did you marry me?" she whispered. The question hung in the air. Derek's smirk faltered for just a moment before returning, sharper than before. "Because I needed someone presentable, someone with no connections, no family to interfere. Someone—" He paused, savoring the words. "Disposable." Another round of laughter. Clara felt something shift inside her chest, a crack forming in the wall she had built around her heart. Not from sadness. Not anymore. Something else was rising now. Something she had buried so deep she had almost forgotten it existed. Pride. She signed the papers with a flourish, the pen scratching against the paper with finality. Then she stood, smoothing the front of her simple navy dress, the only decent piece of clothing Derek had allowed her to keep. "It's done," she said quietly. Derek's attorney gathered the papers, checking each signature with practiced efficiency. "Everything appears to be in order. Mrs. Harrington—" "Ms. Winters," Clara corrected. "My name is Clara Winters." "Of course." The attorney barely glanced at her. "Ms. Winters, you have 30 days to vacate the premises. Per the agreement, you will receive no alimony, no property, and no claim to any of Mr. Harrington's business assets or—" "I know what I signed." Clara picked up her purse, a knockoff she had bought years before meeting Derek, the leather worn soft at the corners, and walked toward the door. She could feel their eyes on her back, could hear the whispers already starting. "Poor thing has nowhere to go," someone murmured. "Should have thought of that before she tried to trap a Harrington." "Did you see that dress? Probably from a thrift store." Clara's hand closed around the door handle. She took a breath, then another. The crack in her chest widened, and something warm began to seep through. Not tears. Something stronger. She opened the door and stepped into the hallway without looking back. The elevator ride down. 43 floors felt like descending into a different world. Clara watched the numbers tick by, her reflection ghostly in the polished metal doors. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Hollow cheeks, dark circles under eyes that had once sparkled with hope, hair pulled back in a severe bun because Derek preferred it that way. Not anymore. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and Clara stepped out into a sea of expensive suits and designer heels. No one looked at her. She was invisible here, a woman without name or status, moving through a world that had never truly accepted her. The revolving doors pushed her out onto Fifth Avenue, where the September sun was fighting a losing battle against the concrete canyon. Clara stood on the sidewalk, people flowing around her like water around a stone, and realized she had absolutely no idea where to go. Her phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Forgot to mention. Your account has been closed. Have a nice life." Clara stared at the screen until the words blurred. Her checking account, the one with the $200 she had managed to squirrel away from household expenses over the past months. Gone. She had $47 in her wallet, a suitcase of clothes in a storage unit she could no longer afford, and exactly 0 family members or friends willing to take her call, thanks to 3 years of Derek's careful isolation. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number this time. Clara almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Ms. Winters?" A woman's voice, professional and crisp. "Yes?" "My name is Patricia Collins. I'm an attorney with Collins and Associates. I'm calling about your grandmother's estate." Clara frowned. "My grandmother passed away 2 years ago. Her estate was settled." "Her primary estate, yes. However, Mrs. Elizabeth Winters maintained a separate trust that was recently discovered during a routine audit. You are the sole beneficiary." Clara's heart stumbled. "A trust? What kind of trust?" "I'd rather discuss the details in person, Ms. Winters. Could you come to our office this afternoon? We're located at 1847 Madison Avenue, Suite 12B. Clara looked around at the indifferent city, at the people rushing past without a glance in her direction. She had nowhere else to be, no one waiting for her, nothing but the clothes on her back and the $47 growing heavier in her purse. "I'll be there in an hour." The law office was nothing like the gleaming tower she had just left. It occupied the ground floor of a brownstone on a quiet side street, sandwiched between an antique bookshop and a cafe that smelled like fresh bread and possibility. Clara pushed open the frosted glass door and found herself in a small waiting room decorated with old photographs and worn leather furniture. "Ms. Winters?" The woman who emerged from the back office was younger than Clara expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail and glasses perched on her nose. "I'm Patricia Collins. Thank you for coming so quickly." Clara shook her hand, noting the firm grip and direct gaze. "You said something about my grandmother's trust." "Yes, please, come in." Patricia led her through a narrow hallway to a small office crammed with file boxes and legal texts. "Have a seat." Clara sank into the chair opposite the cluttered desk, her knees suddenly weak. Patricia pulled a thick file from a drawer and spread its contents across the surface. "Your grandmother, Elizabeth Winters, established this trust in 1987. It was designed to remain dormant until certain conditions were met." Patricia adjusted her glasses, scanning the documents. Specifically, the trust could only be accessed by a female descendant who had experienced, in Mrs. Winters' words, a significant loss of personal assets through no fault of her own. Clara's breath caught. She knew? "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, Ms. Winters. She survived 2 difficult marriages and rebuilt her life twice. I believe she wanted to ensure that if you ever found yourself in similar circumstances, you would have resources to start over." "What kind of resources?" Patricia slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. Clara picked it up with trembling hands. The number at the bottom had too many zeros. "This can't be right," she whispered. "It's right." Patricia's voice softened. "Your grandmother owned several properties in Manhattan that she purchased decades ago. The trust has been accumulating rental income and investment returns for 37 years. After taxes and fees, the current value is approximately $4.2 million. Clara couldn't breathe. The paper shook in her hands, the numbers dancing before her eyes. "There's more," Patricia continued. "One of the properties in the trust is a penthouse apartment on Central Park West. It's been maintained but kept vacant per your grandmother's instructions. The keys and deed transfer papers are here whenever you're ready." Clara set the paper down carefully, afraid it might disappear if she gripped it too tightly. Why didn't I know about this? Why didn't anyone tell me? The trust was designed to remain completely confidential until the conditions were met. Your grandmother was very specific. She didn't want anyone, including potential husbands, to know about its existence. Clara thought about Derek, about his exhaustive investigation into her background before proposing, about how confident he had been that she was, in his words, disposable. She was protecting me, Clara said softly. She was giving you a second chance. Patricia pulled out a set of keys and a leather folder. The penthouse is at 1082 Central Park West, Unit 47A. The doorman has been informed to expect you. The utilities are current, and the apartment is fully furnished. Clara took the keys, feeling their weight in her palm. Real, solid, undeniable. I don't know how to thank you, she managed. Patricia smiled, the first warmth she had shown since they met. Don't thank me yet. There's one more thing you should know. She pulled another document from the file. Your grandmother left a letter. It was to be delivered with the trust. The envelope was yellowed with age, Clara's name written across the front in her grandmother's distinctive handwriting. Clara traced the letters with her fingertip, remembering summers at her grandmother's cottage, the smell of lavender and old books, the way Elizabeth Winters had always looked at her with knowing eyes. Take your time, Patricia said. I'll give you some privacy. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Clara sat alone in the cluttered office, the envelope in her hands, the keys cold against her palm. She opened the letter. My dearest Clara, the familiar handwriting read, if you're reading this, then life has knocked you down. But I raised you to get back up. I'm giving you the means to rebuild. But more importantly, I'm giving you permission to become who you were always meant to be. The world will underestimate you. Let them. There is power in being invisible until you're ready to be seen. Use what I've left you wisely. Take risks. Trust your instincts, and remember, the strongest women are forged in the fires others set to destroy them. I love you, always. Grandma Beth. Clara read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, slipped it into her purse next to the keys, and stood. The sun was setting by the time she reached 1082 Central Park West. The building rose elegant and imposing against the orange sky, its pre-war architecture speaking of old money and quiet power. A uniformed doorman opened the glass doors as she approached. Good evening, ma'am. May I help you? Clara lifted her chin. I'm Clara Winters. I believe you're expecting me. The doorman's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing surprise. Then he recovered, offering a warm smile. Of course, Miss Winters. Welcome home. Let me show you to your apartment. The elevator was paneled in dark wood and brass, mirrors reflecting Clara's image from every angle. She watched herself rise, floor by floor, toward a future she hadn't imagined possible just hours ago. Unit 47A occupied the entire top floor. The doorman handed her the keys and stepped back, allowing her to open the door herself. Clara turned the lock and stepped into a new life. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, the trees gilded with autumn colors, the last light of day painting everything in shades of gold. The furniture was elegant but comfortable. Velvet sofas in deep jewel tones, antique tables gleaming with polish, fresh flowers in crystal vases that someone had clearly arranged in anticipation of her arrival. Clara walked through the rooms in a daze. A chef's kitchen with marble countertops, a library lined with leather-bound books. 3 bedrooms, each larger than the entire apartment she had shared with Derek. And everywhere, small touches that spoke of her grandmother's taste. Watercolors of coastal scenes, porcelain figurines, a telescope pointed toward the stars. She found herself at the window, looking out over the park as the city lights began to flicker on. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably celebrating his freedom, convinced he had destroyed her. He had no idea. Clara pressed her palm against the cool glass. Thank you, Grandma, she whispered. I won't waste this. Her phone buzzed, another unknown number. Hello? Ms. Winters. This is Marcus Chen from Goldman Sachs. I manage the investment portfolio associated with your grandmother's trust. I understand you've been informed of your inheritance. Yes, just today. I'd like to schedule a meeting at your earliest convenience to review the holdings and discuss your financial goals going forward. Would tomorrow afternoon work? Clara thought of the $47 still in her wallet, now rendered almost comical in light of recent developments. Tomorrow would be perfect. She ended the call and turned back to the window. The park spread below her like a dark ocean, lights twinkling on the paths where runners and dog walkers moved through the gathering dusk. Today everyone had laughed as she signed those papers. They had celebrated her humiliation, toasted to her downfall. They had no idea that she had risen before she even left the Y room. Clara Winters was just getting started. The coffee shop on Madison Avenue was one of those places that served single-origin beans at prices that would have made the old Clara choke. But she wasn't the old Clara anymore. She was a woman who had woken up that morning in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, who had showered under a rainfall head in a marble bathroom, who had opened a closet full of clothes her grandmother had somehow known she would need, all in her size, all in styles that made her feel like a different person. She was a woman with $4 million and absolutely no idea what to do with them. "Ms. Winters?" Clara looked up from her untouched latte to find Marcus Chen approaching her table. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s perhaps, with the kind of clean-cut good looks that came from good genes and expensive grooming. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than a used car and carried a leather briefcase that gleamed with newness. "Please, call me Clara." "Clara, then." He slid into the seat across from her, ordered an espresso from the hovering waitress, and pulled out a tablet. "Shall we dive in?" For the next hour, Clara learned more about finance than she had in her entire life. Marcus walked her through the portfolio with patience and clarity, explaining investments and property holdings and tax implications until her head swam with numbers. "The bottom line," he concluded, "is that you're in an extremely strong position. The trust was conservatively managed, which protected it during market downturns, but there's significant room for growth if you're willing to take calculated risks." "What kind of risks?" "Commercial real estate, emerging market funds, potentially angel investing in startups if something catches your interest." Marcus sipped his espresso. "Your grandmother's philosophy was preservation, but you're young. You have time to build." Clara thought about building, about creating something that was hers, not inherited or granted or approved by someone else. "What if I wanted to start a business?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What kind of business?" "I don't know yet." Clara stared into her coffee. "Something that matters. Something that helps people who are where I was yesterday. You'll need to be more specific for a business plan, but it's not a bad impulse." Marcus made a note on his tablet. "Many successful ventures start exactly there, from a personal experience that reveals a gap in the market." Clara nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead. Women like her. Women who had been trapped in marriages that drained their resources and their spirits. Women who signed papers they didn't understand because someone they trusted told them it was fine. Women who woke up one day with nothing, not because they were stupid or lazy, but because the system was designed to leave them that way. "I want to help them," she said softly. "Help who?" Clara looked up at Marcus, her eyes bright, with the first real purpose she had felt in years. "Women who have lost everything. I want to help them get it back." Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, not the polished smile of a financial advisor, but something more genuine. "Now that," he said, "sounds like a business worth building." They parted an hour later with plans to meet again the following week. Clara walked up Madison Avenue in a daze, her mind buzzing with possibilities. A foundation, maybe, or a legal aid organization. Something that could provide resources and support to women navigating the aftermath of financial devastation. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the black car pulling up beside her until a window rolled down. "Ms. Winters." Clara stopped, heart suddenly pounding. The voice was male, deep and completely unfamiliar. She couldn't see past the tinted glass. "Who are you?" "Someone who knew your grandmother. She asked me to look after you." "My grandmother never mentioned there were many things Elizabeth kept private." The back door of the car swung open. "Please, I mean you no harm, but there are things you need to know." Clara stood frozen on the sidewalk. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but something else held her there. The memory of her grandmother's letter, the instruction to trust her instincts, and her instincts, strangely, were telling her to get in the car. She slid onto the leather seat and the door closed behind her. The interior was cool and dark, the windows blocking out the afternoon sun. Across from her sat a man in a charcoal suit, silver hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. "Thank you for joining me," he said. "My name is Vincent Rossi. Your grandmother and I were business associates." "Business associates?" Clara kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. "What kind of business?" Vincent smiled, a thin expression that didn't reach his eyes. "The kind that requires discretion. Elizabeth was a remarkable woman. She had a gift for seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. Is that why she had a secret trust? Opportunities?" "Partly." Vincent pressed a button and the car began to move. "Where shall I take you? Your new apartment, perhaps? How do you know about that?" "I told you. Elizabeth asked me to look after you." He produced a slim folder from beside him and handed it across. "Before she died, she left me instructions, specific instructions for specific circumstances." Clara took the folder but didn't open it. "What circumstances?" "The circumstances you find yourself in now, Ms. Winters. Divorced, alone, starting over with resources that certain people might find interesting." "Certain people?" Vincent's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Your former husband, Derek Harrington, is not merely a wealthy businessman. He has connections to individuals and organizations that operate outside the boundaries of legitimate commerce. Elizabeth knew this. It's why she was so careful to hide your inheritance." Clara felt ice slide down her spine. "Derek? What kind of connections?" "The kind that don't appreciate losing, the kind that view divorce settlements not as the end of a relationship, but as unfinished business." Vincent leaned forward slightly. "Your ex-husband believes he disposed of you completely. He will eventually discover his error. When he does, he will not react well." "Are you threatening me?" "Quite the opposite, Ms. Winters. I'm offering you protection." Clara opened the folder. Inside was a single photograph, Derek standing with a group of men in an underground parking structure, exchanging what appeared to be a large sum of cash. "What is this?" "Evidence of many things that would interest law enforcement should they become aware of them." Vincent settled back in his seat. "Your grandmother collected this information over many years. She wanted you to have it. As insurance." Clara stared at the photograph. Derek's face was clearly visible, his expression one she had never seen during their marriage, cold, calculating, dangerous. "Why would she give this to me?" "Because knowledge is power, Ms. Winters, and you're going to need all the power you can get." The car rolled to a stop. Through the tinted windows, Clara could see the entrance to her building. "This is your stop," Vincent said. "The folder contains contact information for my office. If you need assistance, any kind of assistance, and you have only to ask." "Why?" Clara demanded. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Vincent's expression softened, just for a moment. "I owed Elizabeth a debt that could never be repaid. Protecting you is the closest I can come to honoring it." He reached past her and opened the door. The afternoon light flooded in, harsh after the darkness of the car. "Be careful, Ms. Winters. Trust no one completely. And remember, appearances in this city are almost never what they seem." Clara stepped out onto the sidewalk. The door closed behind her, and the black car pulled away, disappearing into the flow of traffic. She stood there for a long moment, the folder clutched to her chest, her grandmother's words echoing in her mind. "The strongest women are forged in the fires others set to destroy them." Clara walked into her building, past the smiling doorman, into the elevator that would carry her up to her new life. But now that life had taken on a different shape, not just opportunity, danger, and something else, something that made her pulse quicken and her spine straighten. Purpose. The penthouse was quiet when she entered, late afternoon light streaming through the windows. Clara set the folder on the kitchen counter and made herself a cup of tea, moving through the motions automatically while her mind raced. Derek. The man she had married, shared a bed with, trusted with her entire life, was involved in something dark enough to warrant a secret file. Her grandmother had known, had been collecting evidence for years, had put safeguards in place before Clara even met him, had seen the danger coming when Clara was too blind to notice. She opened the folder again, spreading the contents across the marble countertop. More photographs, documents with names and dates she didn't recognize. A thumb drive she was almost afraid to open. Her phone rang, making her jump. Unknown number. "Hello? Ms. Winters, this is Patricia Collins." Clara let out a breath. "Ms. Collins, is everything all right? I wanted to check on you and to let you know that some unusual inquiries have been made about the trust today." Clara's grip tightened on the phone. "What kind of inquiries?" "Someone attempted to access the records at the county clerk's office. They were asking about property transfers and beneficiary information." A pause. "I've alerted the appropriate parties and put additional security protocols in place, but I thought you should know." "Do you know who it was?" "Not yet. I'm looking into it." Patricia's voice was calm but serious. "Ms. Winters, your grandmother was very explicit about the need for discretion. I suggest you follow her example. Don't discuss your inheritance with anyone you don't trust absolutely." Clara looked at the spread of evidence on her counter. "I understand." "Good. I'll be in touch." The call ended. Clara stood in the growing darkness of her penthouse, watching the last light fade over Central Park, and felt the walls of her old life crumbling around her. She had walked into that conference room this morning as a victim, a punchline, a woman with nothing. Now she was something else entirely, a threat, a mystery, a force that men like Derek couldn't control because they didn't even know she existed. Clara gathered the documents and locked them in the safe she had discovered in the master bedroom closet. Then she poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the city sparkle. Below, tomorrow she would start building. A business, a life, a future that belonged to no one but herself. But tonight, she would remember the laughter, the cruelty, the absolute certainty in their eyes that she was worthless. She raised her glass to the glittering skyline. "You have no idea what's coming," she whispered, and somewhere across the city, in his gleaming office surrounded by his wealth and his schemes and his utter conviction that he had won, Derek Harrington went about his evening without the slightest suspicion that the woman he had destroyed was about to become the most powerful force he would ever face. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel, because what happens next in Clara's story will reveal secrets that change everything, and you won't want to miss a single moment. 3 weeks had passed since Clara signed those divorce papers, and she had spent every day building the architecture of her new life. The office space she found was perfect. A converted warehouse in the Flatiron district with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with light. She had hired a small team, Mira, a young attorney fresh out of NYU who burned with the same fire Clara felt. Thomas, a financial consultant who had left Goldman Sachs because, as he put it, he wanted to help people keep their money instead of making rich people richer. And Elena, an office manager whose grandmotherly demeanor concealed a razor-sharp mind. They called it the Phoenix Foundation, a resource center for women navigating financial devastation in the aftermath of divorce, designed to provide legal counsel, financial education, and emotional support. Clara had poured $500,000 into its creation, and every penny felt like a victory. "These are the applications for next month's grants," Mira said, setting a stack of folders on Clara's desk. 47 women. We can afford to help maybe 15. Clara flipped through the files, her heart aching with each story. A teacher who had lost her pension to a husband who claimed she had agreed to transfer it to his name. A small business owner whose partner had drained their joint accounts. A mother of 3 who had signed away her custody rights without realizing what the document said. "We need more funding," Clara said quietly. "We need a miracle," Mira replied. "The kind that doesn't come from grant applications." Clara was about to respond when Thomas appeared in her doorway, his face pale. "You need to see this," he said. He led her to his office where a news broadcast played on his computer screen. A reporter stood outside a federal courthouse, microphone in hand. Allegations of large-scale financial fraud involving several prominent Manhattan businessmen. Sources close to the investigation indicate that arrests are imminent. Clara watched as the camera panned to a group of men descending the courthouse steps. Her blood ran cold. One of them was Derek. "Turn it up," she whispered. Among those facing potential charges is Derek Harrington, CEO of Harrington Capital Management, whose firm has been linked to a network of suspicious transactions spanning multiple years. Federal investigators are reportedly working with witnesses who have come forward with evidence of... Clara's phone buzzed. She answered without thinking. "Ms. Winters." Vincent Rossi's voice was calm as ever. "I assume you've seen the news. What did you do?" "Nothing. This is entirely the work of federal investigators who received an anonymous tip several months ago." A pause. "Your grandmother's collection of evidence merely expedited the process." Clara sank into a chair, her mind reeling. She planned this? Before she died? Elizabeth believed in justice, Ms. Winters, even when justice required patience. Vincent's tone shifted, becoming sharper. "But you should know, this development will make you a target. Derek's associates will be looking for someone to blame, someone to silence." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need protection, real protection, the kind that goes beyond locked doors and security cameras. And you can provide that. I can introduce you to someone who can." Clara thought of her grandmother's letter. "Take risks. Trust your instincts." "Fine. When?" "Tonight. I'll send a car at 8. Wear something appropriate for dinner." He ended the call. Clara sat in silence for a long moment, the news broadcast still, playing in the background. Derek's face filled the screen, his expression one of controlled fury as reporters shouted questions. For the first time since their divorce, their eyes seemed to meet, his through the camera, hers through the screen. And in that moment, Clara felt something she hadn't expected. Not fear, not satisfaction. Power. The restaurant was not the kind that appeared in guidebooks. It occupied the basement level of a building that looked abandoned from the outside, accessed through an unmarked door in a narrow alley. Clara descended the stairs in the dress she had chosen, black, elegant, armor disguised as fashion, and emerged into a world of candlelight and whispered conversations. Vincent was waiting at the entrance. He guided her through the maze of tables to a private room in the back, separated from the main dining area by heavy velvet curtains. A single table, 2 chairs, and in one of them sat a man who made the air itself feel different. He rose as she entered, and Clara's breath caught in her throat. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and eyes the color of storm clouds. His face was angular, almost severe, softened only by laugh lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he had once been capable of joy. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin, and when he extended his hand, Clara noticed the faint scar running across his knuckles. "Miss Winters," he said. His voice was low, controlled, with an accent she couldn't quite place. "I'm Alessandro Ricci, please sit." Clara took the offered chair, acutely aware of Vincent slipping out through the curtains, leaving her alone with this stranger who commanded the room simply by existing. "I understand you knew my grandmother," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I did." Alessandro sat across from her, those storm-grey eyes never leaving her face. "Elizabeth was a remarkable woman. She helped me at a time when I had few allies. She seems to have helped a lot of people. She had a gift for seeing potential where others saw only problems." He poured wine from a bottle that had been waiting on the table, sliding a glass toward her. "She spoke of you often, in her final years. She was worried about your choice of husband. She never said anything to me. Would you have listened?" Clara thought about that, about how utterly convinced she had been that Derek loved her, that their life together was everything she had dreamed, how blind she had been. "No," she admitted, "I wouldn't have." So instead she prepared, built safeguards. ensured you would have resources when the illusion finally shattered. Alessandro sipped his wine. Your grandmother was a strategist, Ms. Winters. She played the long game. And what game are you playing, Mr. Ricci? For the first time, something flickered in those grey eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or amusement. I'm playing the same game I've always played, he said. Protecting what matters. Building something that will outlast me. He set down his glass. And right now what matters is keeping you alive. Vincent mentioned that I might be in danger. Vincent understated the situation. Alessandro leaned forward slightly, and Clara caught a faint scent, sandalwood and something darker like smoke from an old fire. Derek Harrington is not just facing fraud charges. He's connected to organizations that don't forgive failure, organizations that will be looking for scapegoats for evidence to destroy, for anyone who might know too much. I don't know anything. They don't know that. And your sudden inheritance, your grandmother's properties, her resources, raises questions. Dangerous questions. Clara felt a chill despite the warm room. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that you need someone in your corner who understands how these people operate, someone who can anticipate their moves and counter them before they strike. Alessandro's gaze intensified. I'm offering my protection, Ms. Winters. No strings attached. There are always strings. Not this time. He sat back, and something in his expression softened almost imperceptibly. Elizabeth saved my life 20 years ago. She found me when I was at my lowest, gave me resources and guidance, helped me build something from nothing. I owe her a debt that can never be repaid. Watching over you is the closest I can come. Clara studied him, this man of obvious power and hidden depths, offering help she hadn't asked for but desperately needed. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision and withdraw. But I'll still ensure your safety from a distance. Elizabeth's debt will be honored, regardless of your choice. The silence stretched between them. Clara thought of her grandmother, of the letter that had urged her to take risks and trust her instincts. Her instincts were telling her to trust this man. All right, she said finally. But I have conditions. Alessandro raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I don't want to be protected like a fragile object that needs to be locked away. I have a foundation to run, women who need my help. I won't abandon them to hide in some fortress. Understood. And I want to know what's happening. No secrets, no half-truths. If I'm in danger, I need to understand exactly what I'm facing. Alessandro nodded slowly. That seems fair. Finally, Clara hesitated, then pressed forward. I want to know who you really are, Mr. Ricci, not just what you do, but who you are. My grandmother trusted you with my life. I need to understand why. For a long moment, Alessandro simply looked at her. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a small expression that transformed his severe face into something almost beautiful. Most people who enter my world prefer not to know the details, he said. They find it easier to accept protection without understanding its source. I'm not most people. No. His smile deepened. I can see that. He poured more wine, and when he spoke again, his voice had taken on a different quality. Not the controlled coolness of a powerful man conducting business, but something more intimate, more human. I grew up in Sicily, in a village so small it barely appeared on maps. My father was a fisherman. My mother kept a garden and raised 7 children on almost nothing. I was the youngest, the one they thought would become a priest. Clara couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. Her? A priest? I had a gift for listening, for understanding what people needed before they knew themselves. The village thought God had a plan for me. His expression darkened. But God, if he exists, had different ideas. He told her then about his father's death at sea when Alessandro was 15, about the men who came afterward, offering his mother protection in exchange for things no woman should be asked to give. About the choice Alessandro made at 17 to leave the church, to enter a world of shadow and power, to become the kind of man who could protect his family when no one else would. I built an organization, he said quietly. not based on fear or cruelty, but on loyalty, on the principle that true power comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. An organization, Clara repeated. I mean exactly what you're thinking, Ms. Winters. I won't insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. His eyes met hers unflinchingly. I am not a good man by conventional standards. I have done things that would appall you, but I have also built schools in villages that had none, funded hospitals, protected women and children from men who would harm them. That doesn't excuse— No, it doesn't excuse anything. Alessandro's voice was soft but firm. I don't ask for absolution. I don't expect understanding. I only tell you this because you demanded honesty, and honesty is what you'll receive. Clara sat with his words, turning them over, in her mind. This man was everything she should fear, powerful, dangerous, admittedly criminal, and yet her grandmother had trusted him. Her grandmother, who had seen through Derek's facade from the beginning, had looked at Alessandro Ricci and found something worth saving. Why did she help you? Clara asked. All those years ago. What did she see? Alessandro was quiet for a moment. She saw a boy who had lost everything, trying to build something from the wreckage. She saw someone who could be shaped, who could become more than the circumstances that created him. He paused. She saw potential, just as she saw it in you. Clara felt something shift in her chest. Not quite trust, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. I should go, she said finally. It's getting late. Alessandro stood, extending his hand to help her rise. His palm was warm against hers, calloused in ways that spoke of work beyond the boardroom. I'll have someone drive you home, he said. And tomorrow I'll send someone to assess the security at your building and your office. No interference, no visible presence, just precautions. Clara nodded, suddenly exhausted by the weight of the day. Thank you, Mr. Ricci. Alessandro. His hand lingered on hers for just a moment longer. Please, call me Alessandro. She left the restaurant and stepped into the car waiting outside, her mind swimming with revelations and questions. This is the moment, isn't it? Right now, reading these words, feeling Clara's uncertainty and hope and fear, this is the moment that matters. If you're feeling what she's feeling, if you're holding your breath wondering what happens next, leave a comment right now. Write, I felt it too. Because there's something powerful about knowing you're not alone in this journey. Go ahead, write it, and then keep reading. Winter came to Manhattan with a vengeance. Snow blanketed Central Park, turning the trees into sculptures of white and silver. Clara watched from her penthouse window, a cup of coffee warming her hands, and marveled at how much had changed since that autumn afternoon when she had first arrived here. The Phoenix Foundation was thriving. They had helped over 200 women in the past 3 months, providing legal support, financial education, and emergency grants to those who needed them most. Clara had appeared on 3 podcasts and 2 morning shows, carefully sharing her story without revealing the darker elements that lurked beneath the surface. She had become, against all expectations, a voice, and all the while Alessandro Ricci's protection had been invisible but omnipresent. She had seen his people only in glimpses, a car that followed her taxi at a careful distance, a face she recognized from the restaurant appearing in crowds at her public events, subtle adjustments to her security systems that Thomas had noticed and quietly attributed to upgrades. They had spoken only twice since that dinner. Brief phone calls to exchange information about Derek's ongoing legal troubles and the investigation that seemed to grow more damaging by the day. Each conversation had left Clara feeling strangely unsettled, as though Alessandro's voice carried weight that words alone couldn't explain. Now, staring at the snow-covered park, she realized she wanted to see him again, not for protection or information or any practical reason. She simply wanted to see him. Her phone buzzed, almost as if summoned by her thoughts. Clara! Alessandro's voice was tighter than usual. We need to meet, today. What's wrong? Not over the phone. I'll send a car in an hour. The call ended. Clara stood frozen for a moment, her heart suddenly racing with a fear she couldn't name. An hour later, she found herself in a place she hadn't expected, a warehouse in Brooklyn that had been converted into what appeared to be a command center. Screens lined one wall, displaying feeds from cameras across the city. Men in dark suits moved with quiet efficiency between workstations. Alessandro met her at the door, his expression grim. "Derek's been released on bail," he said without preamble. His lawyers found a technical issue with the initial arrest warrant. Clara's blood ran cold. "Released? When?" "This morning. But that's not the worst of it." He led her to a private office, closing the door behind them. "His associates have been asking questions about you, about your inheritance, about the evidence that sparked the investigation. They think I had something to do with it. They know you did, or at least they suspect." Alessandro pulled a photograph from his pocket and handed it to her. "This was taken yesterday outside your foundation's office." Clara looked at the image, a man she didn't recognize standing across the street, clearly watching the building's entrance. "Who is he?" "His name is Victor Marchetti. He's what you might call a fixer. When problems need to disappear, he's the one. Who makes it happen? And I'm a problem. You're a loose end." Alessandro's voice softened. "Derek and his associates can't risk what you might know, what evidence you might possess. They're going to make a move, Clara. Soon." She sank into a chair, her mind racing. "What do I do?" Alessandro knelt before her, taking her hands in his. The gesture was unexpectedly tender, and Clara felt something catch in her chest. "You trust me," he said quietly. "You let me handle this." "How?" "By staying. Close, very close." His thumbs traced circles on her palms. "I have a property outside the city, a secure estate. You'll stay there until this is resolved. I can't abandon the foundation. The women who depend on me will be better served by you alive than dead." His grip tightened. "This is not negotiable, Clara. These men don't play games. They don't issue warnings. They simply act, and by the time you realize the danger, it's too late." Clara looked into his storm-gray eyes and saw something she hadn't expected, and fear, not for himself but for her. "How long?" "A few weeks, maybe a month. Long enough for me to remove the threat permanently." "What does that mean? Remove permanently?" Alessandro's expression hardened. "It means exactly what it sounds like." Clara pulled her hands from his grasp. "I won't be the excuse for violence. I won't have blood on my hands. The blood will be on mine." His voice was steady, almost gentle. "As it has always been. I don't ask for your approval or your blessing. I only ask that you let me keep you safe." The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. "Is there no other way?" Clara whispered. "There are always other ways, but none that guarantee your survival." He rose, stepping back to give her space. "The choice is yours, Clara. It always is. But I need you to understand what you're choosing." Clara stood by the window of that Brooklyn warehouse, looking out at the grey winter sky. She thought of her grandmother, who had survived 2 terrible marriages, of the women at her foundation who had lost everything and fought to rebuild, of the person she was becoming, not a victim, not a punchline, but someone who could make a difference. She thought of Alessandro, this man of shadow and power who looked at her with something that might have been hope. "1 month," she said finally. "And I want to be kept informed of everything. No secrets." "Agreed." "And when this is over, I want to talk, really talk, about what happens next." Alessandro's expression shifted, surprise flickering across those severe features. "When this is over," he said slowly, "I would like that very much." The estate was everything Alessandro had promised, a fortress disguised as a country home, set on 50 acres of woodland an hour north of the city. Stone walls, iron gates, security systems that would have impressed military installations. And yet inside it was warm and welcoming, filled with art and books, and the smell of something delicious cooking in the kitchen. "It's beautiful," Clara said, surprised despite herself. "It was my mother's dream," Alessandro replied, carrying her single suitcase toward the main house. A place where safety didn't require ugliness. She never saw it finished. She died the year before construction was complete, but I tried to honor what she wanted. Clara noticed the photographs as they walked through the entrance hall. A woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, children playing on a rocky beach, an old man mending fishing nets. Your family. What's left of them, in memory. Alessandro set down her suitcase. The living ones are scattered, some in Italy, some elsewhere, but they're provided for, protected. Even now, with everything happening? Especially now. He met her eyes. That's what protection means, Clara. It doesn't waver when circumstances change. It endures. She found herself believing him. Against every instinct, every voice of caution in her head, she believed this man who had admitted to terrible things and offered no excuse for them. Maybe that was why she trusted him, because he didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. The first week passed slowly. Clara established a routine, morning walks on the grounds accompanied by a quiet guard named Paolo, who never spoke but always seemed to know exactly where she wanted to go. Afternoons spent on video calls with her foundation team, managing operations from a distance. Evenings by the fire in the library, reading books from shelves that stretched to the ceiling. Alessandro appeared unpredictably, arriving late at night or early in the morning, staying for hours or vanishing within minutes. He would find her in the library or the kitchen or the garden, and they would talk about her foundation, his childhood, the state of the world, the books they loved. She learned that he spoke 4 languages fluently and could read 3 more, that he had once wanted to be an architect, that his favorite food was his mother's recipe for pasta with sardines, which he had tried and failed to replicate for 20 years. He learned about her summers with her grandmother, her failed attempts at law school, the way she had slowly lost herself during her marriage until she barely recognized her own reflection. "He dimmed you," Alessandro said one evening, refilling her wine glass. "That's what men like Derek do. They find bright things and make them smaller because small things are easier to control." "I let him," Clara admitted. "That's what I can't forgive myself for." "You survived. You rebuilt. You became something stronger." His hand brushed hers as he set down the bottle. "That's not weakness, Clara. That's the opposite of weakness." She looked at him, this man of power and darkness who spoke of strength with such certainty, and felt something shift in her chest. "Alessandro." The sound of his name on her lips seemed to affect him. His expression changed, walls dropping for just a moment to reveal something raw and vulnerable beneath. "Don't," he said softly. "Don't start something I can't finish. Not until you're safe." "And after." He was silent for a long moment. Then he raised his hand, brushing a strand of hair from her face with a tenderness that made her breath catch. "After," he said, "I will tell you everything you want to know, show you everything I am. And then you can decide if this is something you want." "What if I've already decided?" His smile was sad and beautiful. "Then you decided too quickly. You deserve to know all of me before you choose, the good and the bad, the blood and the beauty." He pulled his hand back. "I won't let you make that choice while you're afraid. It wouldn't be fair." Clara wanted to argue, to insist that she wasn't choosing from fear. But something in his eyes stopped her. A wisdom born of hard experience, of watching people make decisions they later regretted. "All right," she said, "finally. After." Alessandro nodded, and something in the air between them settled into patience, into promise. They had time. They would wait. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks into Clara's stay at the estate. Alessandro found her in the library, where she had been reading by the fire. His expression was carefully controlled, but she had learned to read him by now, the slight tension in his jaw, the darkness in his eyes. "It's done," he said. Clara set down her book. "What's done?" "Victor Marchetti has been removed from the equation, so have 2 of Derek's closest associates. He sat across from her, his movements weary in a way she had never seen. "They won't be troubling you again. Removed." Clara's voice was steady, despite the tremor running through her body. "You mean, I mean they're no longer a threat. The specifics don't matter. They matter to me." Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a newspaper, clipping, setting it on the table between them. The headline read, "3 arrested in federal corruption probe facing life sentences." Clara picked up the clipping, scanning the article. Victor Marchetti, 2 other names she vaguely recognized from Alessandro's briefings, all arrested, all facing charges that would keep them behind bars for decades. "You didn't—" She looked up at him. "They're alive. They're in federal custody, having been presented with evidence so comprehensive that their lawyers have already begun negotiating plea deals." Alessandro's expression was unreadable. "Did you think I would simply have them killed?" "I didn't know what to think." "Then let me be clear." He leaned forward, his eyes holding hers. "I have done terrible things in my life, Clara, things that would horrify you. But I learned long ago that death creates martyrs, while imprisonment creates examples, and examples are far more useful." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes, not from fear or relief, but from something else, a recognition that this man, despite everything, had listened to her, had found a way to protect her that didn't require the violence she had dreaded. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." He sat back, his posture rigid. Derek himself remains a problem. His associates are contained, but he still has resources, connections, and now that his allies have been arrested, he'll be desperate. What does that mean for me? It means you can't return to your normal life. Not yet. Alessandro's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry, Clara. I know you want this to be over. I want to go home. I want to see my team, my foundation." She stood, pacing to the window. "I've been here for 3 weeks. The women I serve need me. They need you alive. They need you present, not grieving in a hospital bed or worse." Clara pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Outside, snow was falling again, covering the grounds in a fresh layer of white. "How much longer?" "I don't know." Alessandro rose, crossing to stand behind her. His presence was warm and solid at her back. "But I promise you, I'm doing everything possible to end this, to give you your life back." "And what about your life?" She turned to face him, finding him closer than expected. "What happens to you when this is over?" His expression softened. "That depends on you." "Stop saying that. Stop making everything contingent on my choices. Because your choices are the only ones that matter to me." His hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that made her ache. "I've lived my life for 60 years making decisions that affected thousands of people, but right now, in this moment, there is only one person whose opinion I care about, and she's standing in front of me." Clara searched his face, the lines of age and experience, the shadows of a life she could barely imagine, the unexpected warmth in those storm-grey eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of me, of everything, of Derek, of what happens next, of what I'm feeling right now." Alessandro's thumb traced her cheekbone. "Tell me what you're feeling." "Like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, like I've been standing there my whole life, and for the first time, I'm not afraid to jump." His eyes darkened. "Clara, I know. Not yet. Not until it's safe." She pulled back slightly, needing space to think. "But when it is, I won't need time to decide. I already know." He didn't respond. Instead, he simply looked at her, with an expression she couldn't name, something between hope and fear, between certainty and surrender. "I should let you rest," he said finally. "Tomorrow we'll be busy. We have plans to make." He left her standing by the window, watching the snow fall, feeling something new taking root in her chest, something that might have been love. The breakthrough came a week later, in a way no one expected. Clara was in the kitchen, attempting to recreate Alessandro's mother's pasta recipe with the help of the estate's cook when her phone rang. Patricia Collins. "Ms. Winters," the attorney's voice was tight with barely contained excitement. "I have news. Big news." Clara wiped flour from her hands. "What kind of news?" "Do you remember the suspicious inquiries about your grandmother's trust, the ones we couldn't trace?" "Of course. We found the source. It was Derek's attorney. He was conducting illegal searches, trying to find evidence that could be used against you." A pause. "But in doing so, he accidentally uncovered something else. Something that changes everything." Clara's heart began to pound. "What?" "The prenuptial agreement you signed. The one that stripped you of everything. It was fraudulent. The signatures were forged, the witnesses were paid off, and the document was backdated to make it appear legitimate." Clara sank into a chair. "What does that mean?" "It means the divorce settlement is invalid. It means you're entitled to half of everything Derek owns. His business, his properties, his investments, all of it." Patricia's voice rose with triumph. "And it means Derek Harrington is facing fraud charges on top of everything else. His lawyers have already been contacted. By tomorrow, this will be public." Clara couldn't speak. The world seemed to tilt beneath her, everything she had accepted as reality shifting into something new. "Ms. Winters, are you there?" "I'm here." Clara's voice came out as a whisper. I need a moment." She ended the call and sat in the quiet kitchen, the scent of garlic and olive oil filling the air, the pasta forgotten on the counter. Half of everything. She didn't want his money, didn't want anything that reminded her of those 3 years of diminishment. But the idea that he had stolen from her, that even the prenuptial agreement had been a lie, sparked something hot and righteous in her chest. Not just anger, something stronger. Justice. When Alessandro found her an hour later, she was still in the kitchen, but the pasta was finished, and 2 plates sat steaming on the counter. "I heard about the call," he said carefully. "Patricia contacted me as well." Clara looked up at him, and something in her expression made him stop in his tracks. "I want it," she said. "All of it. Everything he stole, everything he owes. I want to take it and use it to burn down every lie he ever told." Alessandro's eyes widened slightly. Then, slowly, he smiled, a real smile, one that transformed his entire face. "There she is," he said softly. "Who?" "The woman your grandmother saw, the one she was preparing you to become." He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "What do you want to do, Clara? Tell me, and I'll help you make it happen." Clara felt the fire burning in her chest, the clarity of purpose she had been missing for so long. "I want to go public. Tomorrow, when the news breaks, I want to be there. Not hiding, not afraid. I want Derek to see my face when everything he built comes crashing down. That's dangerous. I know. He could have people watching, waiting." "I know." Alessandro studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Then we'll be ready for them." The press conference was scheduled for noon at the offices of the Phoenix Foundation. Clara had insisted. This was her ground, her territory, the thing she had built from nothing. If she was going to face Derek and the world, she would do it surrounded by the women she had helped, the work she had created, the proof that she had turned her devastation into something beautiful. The room was packed. Reporters, cameras, microphones, all pointed at the podium where Clara stood, wearing a red dress that had arrived that morning with no note, but with a single pressed rose tucked into the tissue paper. She knew who had sent it. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady. "I know there have been many questions about the recent developments in Derek Harrington's legal situation. I'm here to answer them." She told her story, not all of it. Some things were still too dangerous, too complicated, but enough. The fraudulent prenuptial, the systematic stripping of her resources, the morning she had signed those divorce papers while everyone laughed, believing they had won. "But they were wrong," Clara said, her voice rising. "They underestimated me. They underestimated the women like me who have been told we're worthless, disposable, nothing. They didn't understand that when you take everything from someone, you don't destroy them, you free them. The room was silent, hanging on her every word. The Phoenix Foundation exists because I survived, because other women survived, and because we refuse to let survival be the end of our story. She lifted her chin, finding the camera that would broadcast her words to millions. To anyone watching who feels trapped, diminished, invisible, you are seen, you are valued, and you are stronger than you know. Rise from the ashes. Become something new. The world is waiting for you. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous roar. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and for a moment, Clara let herself simply feel it. The power of her own voice, the weight of her own truth. Then her eyes found a figure at the back of the room. Alessandro stood in the shadows, watching her with an expression that made her heart skip. Pride. After the press conference, after the interviews and the handshakes and the overwhelming flood of support, Clara found herself on the roof of her building, watching the sun set over the city. She heard him approach before she saw him. That quiet footfall she had come to recognize. That presence that made the air itself feel different. "You were magnificent," Alessandro said, coming to stand beside her. I was terrified. Magnificently terrified then. He produced a small box from his pocket. "I have something for you." Clara took the box, opening it to find a simple gold necklace with a tiny phoenix pendant, wings spread in flight. "It belonged to my mother," Alessandro said quietly. "She wore it every day until she died. She said it reminded her that no matter how bad things got, there was always a chance to begin again." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "I can't accept this. It's too precious." "It's exactly as precious as the person I'm giving it to." He took the necklace, moving behind her to fasten it around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin, warm and gentle. "Is it over now, the danger?" "Derek is in custody. His remaining allies have scattered or been arrested. The threat is—" He paused. "As contained as it can be." Clara turned to face him. "Then there's nothing stopping us anymore." Alessandro's expression was a mixture of hope and caution. "Clara, I need you to be sure. I need you to understand what you're choosing. My life is not simple. It never will be. I know. I have enemies, obligations, a past that will never fully release me. I know. I can't promise you safety, only that I will do everything in my power to protect you." Clara reached up, touching his face. Those storm-grey eyes that had seen so much, that severe mouth that had spoken such tender words. "I'm not asking for promises," she said. "I'm asking for you, all of you, the good and the bad, the blood and the beauty." She smiled, echoing his words from weeks ago. "I've already decided, Alessandro. I decided weeks ago. I was just waiting for you to catch up." Something broke in his expression then, the last wall, the final defense. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "God help me. I love you, Clara." "I love you too." They stood there as the sun sank below the skyline, as the city lights began to flicker on, as the world continued its spinning regardless of the two people who had found each other against all odds. It wasn't a fairy tale. There would be challenges ahead, complications they couldn't predict, a world that might never fully understand their choices. But standing in his arms, watching the city she had reclaimed spread out before her, Clara Winters knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had risen from the ashes, and she would never be burned again. 6 months later, the autumn had returned to Manhattan, painting Central Park in shades of gold and crimson. Clara stood at the window of her penthouse, their penthouse now, though Alessandro still maintained the estate for weekends and emergencies, watching the morning light filter through the trees. So much had changed. The Phoenix Foundation had expanded to 3 cities, helping thousands of women rebuild their lives. The settlement from Derek's case had funded a new legal aid clinic specifically for divorce victims, staffed by attorneys who worked on sliding-scale fees. Clara had been featured on magazine covers, given keynote speeches, become the face of a movement she had never intended to start, and Derek himself was in federal prison, serving 15 years for fraud, conspiracy, and a host of other charges that had emerged once investigators started digging. His empire had crumbled, his allies had scattered, and his name had become synonymous with everything Clara's foundation fought against. Sometimes she thought about him, about the man she had married, the life she had believed in. It felt like another lifetime, another person. You're thinking too hard. Clara turned to find Alessandro in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in his hands, wearing the soft grey sweater she had bought him because it made his eyes look like storm clouds breaking into sunlight. Just remembering, she said. The past? The journey. She accepted the coffee, pressing a kiss to his cheek. It's hard to believe it's been less than a year. The best year of my life. He said it simply, without flourish, and that was what made it matter. The way. Alessandro spoke his truths quietly, without expectation of response. They stood together at the window, watching the park wake up, and Clara felt a peace she had never known was possible. I have something to tell you, Alessandro said eventually. Good news or bad? Complicated news. He set down his coffee. My associates, the organization, we've been working towards something for years, something I never thought would actually happen. Clara felt a flicker of concern. What is it? An exit, he met her eyes. A complete restructuring that would remove me from any direct involvement, legitimate business ventures only. No more shadows, no more secrets. Clara's heart stuttered. Is that possible? It's possible. It's also dangerous, complicated, and will take time. He took her hands. But I want you to know, whatever I was, whatever I've done, I want to become someone who deserves you, someone who can walk into the light and stay there. Clara felt tears threatening. You don't have to. I do. His voice was fierce. Not because you asked, because I finally have something worth changing for. She kissed him then, coffee forgotten, morning forgotten, everything forgotten, except this man who had been forged in darkness and chosen to step toward the light. Whatever it takes, she whispered, however long it takes. I'll be here. Even if it's hard. Especially if it's hard. She smiled against his lips. That's what love means, Alessandro. Not the easy parts. The hard parts. The impossible parts, all of it. He pulled her closer, and for a long moment they simply held each other. Then Clara's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and felt her smile widen. It's Mira. She says the new clinic is ready for the ribbon cutting. Then we should go. Alessandro released her, already reaching for his jacket. Your public awaits. Our public, Clara corrected. You're part of this now, whether you like it or not. His expression softened into that rare, beautiful smile. I like it, more than I ever imagined possible. They left the penthouse together, stepping into the elevator that would carry them down to the world Clara had rebuilt. Outside, the autumn sun was warm, the air crisp with possibility. Leaves swirled on the sidewalk like confetti, and somewhere in the distance Clara could hear music playing. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, trembling, broken, laughing stock of a room full of people who thought they had won. They had no idea. Everyone had laughed as she signed the separation, unaware she stood above the Mafia Boss quietly. But Clara hadn't been standing above him. She had been standing beside him, without either of them knowing it. Two people broken by different fires, finding their way toward the same light. And now, walking through the city they had both claimed, Clara Winters and Alessandro Ricci were living proof of something beautiful. That the strongest love stories aren't written by fate. They're written by survivors. If you've watched this far, it's because you liked this story. Leave a comment saying, I've watched this far, so I can get to know you and see who really enjoys the stories here on the channel. And before you go, if this story touched you, if you felt Clara's journey in your own heart, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to rise from the ashes. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story. Every week we bring you tales of courage, transformation, and love against all odds. Because your story isn't over either. It's just beginning.